2 years before the 7/7 attacks, Britain's first suicide bombers struck. Tel Aviv, April 2003, 3 dead and more than 50 injured.
People were running out and people were on the ground. Glass broken and the smell, the flesh.
The attack carried out by 2 men from Hounslow and Derby. Now, for the first time, questions are being asked about whether apparent links between this attack in Tel Aviv and the July 7th London bombings have ever been properly investigated.
7/7 for me is it's like the continuation bombing of Mike's Place.
This special case was omitted. I don't know what is the reason for that.
Lead 7/7 bomber Mohammed Sidique Khan had been on the surveillance radar from as early as 2001. But an inquest into the London attacks found British intelligence and police could not have reasonably been expected to have identified him as an imminent threat. Yet a potentially crucial fact was missing from the inquest's deliberations, one confirmed by senior Israeli security officials.
Because it's all been said before by far more than...
Mohammed Sidique Khan had visited Israel for a single day in February 2003, just weeks before the Mike's Place attack. The Tel Aviv bombers were Asif Hanif and Omar Sharif, 2 British citizens who had travelled to Israel after visiting Syria and Jordan. Hanif's device detonated, Sharif's failed. He was found drowned on the beach weeks later.
Who's Tony Blair, George Bush?
Later, this martyrdom video was released, claiming they had acted on behalf of the Palestinian militant group Hamas, but their radical connections went well beyond Gaza. Like Mohammed Sidique Khan, the Tel Aviv bombers were involved in the UK activities of the now banned Al-Muhajiroun group. It is believed Sharif and Khan may have visited the same mosque in Beeston over a number of years, and a BBC documentary in 2006 went further still, suggesting that Khan, Omar Sharif and Asif Hanif had together approached a businessman in Manchester in 2001, attempting to persuade him to fund a project to send young Muslims for education in Syria and Afghanistan. If Mohammed Sidique Khan visited Israel just weeks before the bombing that took place here, and he knew the 2 men that carried it out, it raises the question of whether the investigation into the backgrounds and the network of the Mike's Place bombers was sufficient. After Mike's Place, some of Sharif's relatives were put on trial for withholding information. 1 was cleared and 2 others had cases dropped. No one has ever been convicted in the UK for connection to the Tel Aviv attacks.
How can this guy walk in and out of Israel?
For Joshua Fordham, there's always been questions about the British response to what happened at Mike's Place. He was working as a barman when the bombing took place, but was also filming a documentary about the bar itself.
I had about 30 hours of footage that I had collected about a week or 2 before the bombing. And of course, the night of the bombing, I remember I filmed at least 2 hours of footage.
The footage was of understandable interest to the authorities. In his recently published graphic novel about the attacks, he recounts an interview with Israeli intelligence.
Before they sent me off, they said the British Secret Service are going to be getting in contact with you in the next few days because they want to interview you and they want to see your tapes. Please cooperate with them. And I said to them, absolutely. And basically the end of the meeting was basically them saying to me, this is their problem. They had my details and they said that they passed it on, and I never, ever heard from them. Ever.
After 7/7, Israeli authorities looked into whether Khan's visit to Israel was part of the planning for the Mike's Place attacks. They've since said there were no findings to corroborate this, but was it really just a tourist trip? Analysts speculate Khan's use of Allenby crossing with Jordan may have been to scout the security at the crossing itself. Why? Because they believed the Mike's Place bombers used this crossing to smuggle in explosives they picked up in Syria.
Most, 95, even more than that, of the explosive charges that were used in the suicide attacks and other terror attacks were based on improvised explosives, assembled and produced in the backyard of Palestinian residents. And here we are finding something professional, prepared very well.
Analyst Barak Ben-Zor once held a senior position in the Shin Bet, Israel's equivalent of MI5. He says the Mike's Place attack was unique and should have raised alarm bells across the board.
If we are looking to the Hamas at that period of time, there were no need for any foreigners to join their campaign of suicide attack. So bringing two people such a long way to Tel Aviv in order to carry out a suicide attack, it was very peculiar.
And he's surprised the possible connection of Mohammed Sidique Khan has never been publicly examined by the post-7/7 inquiries.
This case was not mentioned. There are a variety of other cases that the reports deal with very deeply and very, let's say, seriously. But this special case was omitted. I don't know what is the reason for that.
The government's official account of 7/7 said there was no evidence of anything suspicious about Khan's visit to Israel. However, there is a crucial omission from this report. At no point does it record anything about the Mike's Place attacks. Indeed, in its timeline of global acts of terror, Britain's first ever suicide bombers do not feature at all. The coroner who led the 7/7 inquests said she believed she'd left no stone unturned. But a lawyer who represented the majority of the victims' families during those proceedings has told Sky News he would have asked her to look into the Israel trip had his team been aware of it. Now the chairman of the Home Affairs Select Committee says further action should be taken.
It is relevant because the relatives of the victims of 7/7 believe it is relevant, and since it was not in the original timeline, it does need to be considered. And I shall be writing to the Home Secretary to ask whether she agrees with that and to get an explanation as to why this information was not put before the reports in the first place.
It seems the question of links between Mohammed Sidique Khan and the Tel Aviv bombing has not even been asked, let alone answered. Tom Rayner, Sky News, Jerusalem.